I like this part right here. Come on. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Now we add a little something to it. Just to encourage you. We're going to take you to church right here. Let's go! We'll keep marching right until the victory is won. To all my brothers out there. Hold your head up, brothers, till the victory is won. To all my sisters in the struggle. Keep believing, sisters, till the victory is won. Till that day. Till that day comes. Hey. Let us march on. To victory. Till victory is won.
Excellent, excellent. Again, good morning, and we're going to move right into our agenda. I'll pass this to Gary Giscombe, who has, I'm sorry. Got to, enough of Kurt. All right,
Okay.
Gary, take it.
Morning, everyone. We're going to do a moment in history, and this morning we're going to be hearing from Dr. Janet Taylor. Dr. Janet Taylor is a community psychiatrist in Sarasota. She was on the front line battling the emotional and economic impact of mental illness. She holds an MD from the University of Louisville, completed a psychiatric residence at New York Medical College. She has done a column called Family Circle called Ask Dr. Janet. Janet is also a frequent speaker on ABC, Good Morning America, NBC, The Today Show, and CNN. She is a former host of Discovery Health Own Issues Facing Trauma, as a great guest director of Jeremy Kine Show. Dr. Taylor is a frequent speaker on the impact of racial trauma and racism, anti-racism, and conscious allyship. Dr. Taylor is experienced in diversity, inclusion work, including cultural competency, and more importantly, cultural humility. She is an expert in implicit bias through the lens of neuroscience and behavior. One of the things that we have in common, we both lived in a little village in Westchester community in New York, and that's where I met Janet. And I give you now Janet Taylor.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, I'm happy to be here. Hello to Bernice. Hello to all of you. I see sisters on the call, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. And from the joy I heard of you all greeting each other, seems like I've been missing out on Asala. But unlike most of you, I still work. And in fact, will apologize because I have to pop off after I speak because I'm seeing patients today. But I'm proud to be here, certainly to talk about what unfortunately is not a moment in history, but history in terms of being Black in America. And what I was going to talk about was shots fired and the impact of racialized trauma on the Black family. And to put it into context, something that all of you know well is certainly this goes back, in terms of 400 years ago. And what I mean goes back is structural violence against Black people and the impact that has had medically, which I will talk about. But 400 years ago, when Africans were brought here against their will to serve as unpaid labor, racialized capitalism, from that, being on plantations came this notion of scientific racism and this decision that Black people were inherently inferior to white people, and which we know is wrong. But out of that certainly came this disregard for the Black body. And that's evidenced by, after plantations, you had policies like the Black Codes. And also at that time, after the Emancipation Proclamation, this realization that white people could basically do anything they wanted to Black people with no consequence. So out of plantations, you had policies, and then policing. The KKK started right after the Emancipation Proclamation. And then after that, certainly protests, which have been around for a long time, which has brought us to where we have been the past year, which is this pandemic of COVID-19, but also this pandemic and certainly more global awareness of the impact of structural racism, racialization, systemic racism, and structural violence on Black people. So what does that mean? As we were home and witnessed, the murders of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and then George Floyd, it cemented into white people, but something that we've known forever, and that is that, Black people can be killed at will, as evidenced by even the unfortunate recent shootings where, white people get escorted out. Dylan Roof goes to Burger King after he shoots 8 people in Charleston, but Black people who even the thought of even a traffic stop or the thought of being murdered do not have the same liberties in terms of a fair trial, because unfortunately ours is more by a bullet. So what does that mean? What does that mean to the Black family? What does that mean to a community? And Dr. David Williams out of Harvard did a study that showed that when an unarmed Black man or woman is killed in a community, that community suffers. 30% of the people are more likely to experience depression. There are missed days at work. There are more higher likelihood of increasing medical problems, but white people in the same community have no ill effects at all. And I think that really tells the story of certainly this, not just inequities that happen in medicine, but really going back to structural violence. And structural violence is a term that was coined by a Danish sociologist, Paul Farmer. Dr. Paul Farmer used a lot to talk about what happened in Haiti. And that's basically, certainly the structural systems that happen that contribute to ongoing poverty, ongoing inequity in the criminal justice system, ongoing disparities in terms of, from wages to housing, and then the violence that happens when, it doesn't have to necessarily be physical, but when people are harmed because of policies, because of structures, because of thoughts. And so, there's no question that if you want to look at the link of racism and outcome on families and health, then it's there. So there are definitely physical consequences. We know that, racism in and of itself, and racism is really not about race at all, not about the color of one's skin, but who's in power and who's in control. And that plays a part certainly in doctors' offices. We know that a Black person, a Black woman has to present to her doctor at least 10 times before even asked about her mood. We know that there are healthcare disparities as a Black person may have kidney disease, and Black people with kidney disease are 6 times more likely to be referred to dialysis than for a renal transplant. We know that there are healthcare disparities even looking at COVID, from essential workers to who's being offered treatment to who's been offered the vaccine. Even here in Sarasota and Manatee County, in Sarasota, Blacks make up 4% of the population. Only 1% have gotten the vaccine. In Manatee County, 9% of the population, 2% have gotten it. And in Florida, in general, where Blacks make up 16% of the population, only I think 4% of Black people have gotten the vaccination. So the way this country started certainly has its tentacles in every aspect of healthcare, and that certainly leads to disparities, and racism definitely is a consequence of that. If you look at sickle cell disease, which kills 100,000 Black people every year, it's still the least funded disease. There's not a national registry for sickle cell disease. In many cases, outreach education has been cut, and there's a long history of how the government has botched that. So racism shapes the health-related behavior of groups. If you don't feel like you're welcome in a healthcare institution or welcome in a clinic, you're going to be less likely to go. Also, when you go into the clinic and the doctor may assume that you're not going to follow instructions, so won't even offer you things, or if people feel disrespected when they walk into a door, that certainly shapes things. I spent 25 years in New York, worked at Harlem Hospital for 12 years. And I can tell you, even working in a Black hospital, I mean, where there are Africans, there are dark-skinned Dominicans, there are a number of people, Black people, African Americans who came into that hospital didn't all feel welcome. So it's not always just because you're working with people who may be the same color as you. There still has to be a level of cultural humility where you welcome people in and can be more empathic. It's not just cultural competence. It's not enough just to, be able to have a translator speak the language. You actually have to be invested in monitoring your own bias. If you have a brain, you're biased. We're all biased, but understand what that means. Understand what that means institutionally. Understand what that means for that person so they come back. We know the stress of racism leads to higher rates of, just as stress does anyway, of smoking, of drug use and overeating, and certainly in our community. All of those certainly have been a factor. Prenatal effects, Arlene Geronimus, sociologist, talked about weathering, and that is chronic racism on people, and in particular women, and the effects that has. We know that racism affects people at the cellular level. And so it used to be that, if you were the I don't even want to call it a victim, but subject to racism, you had to point it out. A lot of times people didn't believe you, and you were just talking, always complaining or doing all those things. But we know, like, studies show what racism does at the cellular level. Studies that look at number of Black doctors who, if you look at the socioeconomic status, it used to be thought that socioeconomic status was protective, and in many cases it is, but not necessarily for Black people. There are studies that compare Black doctors to white doctors, same risk factors, and Black doctors still have higher rates of diabetes, of cancer, hypertension. So it lets you know that there's something else. If you look at from a prenatal effect, in terms of Black women, independent of socioeconomic status, have the highest rates of low birth weight for their infants and preterm births, and that is directly attributable to racism. And in fact, there's a hormone that has been found that keeps the cervix together during pregnancy that is directly affected by racism and the stress of racism. And so that is a connection from a physiologic standpoint. We also know that when women who are have chronic stress or in domestic violence relationships and they're pregnant, that it alters the brain of the fetus and lowers it so that it'll take less for them to be anxious, less for them to be depressed. So there's epigenetic impacts of racism as well. There's the unconscious pathway. Certainly implicit bias is something that we've been talking a lot about with George Floyd and certainly just in general, but understanding that the way that interplays throughout people's lives in terms of not just in institutions of hospitals and clinics, but going for jobs. If you have an ethnic sounding name, then you're 70% less likely to be called back for a first interview. What does that mean? Who's involved in decision making, who's in rooms and who's not, where people sit, certainly has an impact. Racism means that we constantly, even now, have to self-regulate ourselves and decide what we want to respond to and what we don't want to respond to. when something may happen, knowing that, again, it's stressful being Black in America. Sometimes it's stressful being Black in Florida. And you consciously have to decide, like, was that racist, or, was it just a mistake, or, do I need to address that? And that can get our own blood pressure up. So just, being mindful and bringing yourself back to balance. So, you can enjoy this life that, we're striving to bring is something that certainly impacts families. From a criminal justice standpoint, I still work with individuals who are criminal justice involved, Manatee County, Sarasota, worked at Rikers, and worked at cases before I left New York, the Center for Alternative Sentencing and Employment, working with individuals who have been incarcerated. And 80% of women who have been incarcerated are mothers. And certainly the impact of a child, they don't care if their mother's in jail or not. All they know is their mother's not there. The impact that the family, that it has in terms of income, as it relates to education, who's taking care of this child and what that means, certainly is big. And individuals who have been who are incarcerated, my experience has been that men, Black men, in not just in particular, but Black men who have been incarcerated still run the family from wherever they are. And so you talk about families that have a lack of income. If you've been incarcerated, have a felony, in Florida, you can't get Medicaid. Certainly in New York, you may not have access to public housing. And so what does that mean in terms of, if we look at healthcare and the factors that contribute to an optimal healthcare outcome? It's level of education, it's housing stability. So all of those factors certainly impact families. And when you look at who, Black and brown people make up 70, in some cases 80% of people incarcerated. What does that mean to families, right? And that incarceration rate goes back to policing that started right after the Emancipation Proclamation. So in terms of arrest and being able to be falsely arrested and not even given the benefit of the doubt. We know that Black people and white people commit crimes at the same rate, yet Black and brown people arrested 7 times higher rates. Black and brown people are, depending on where you are, 3 to 6 times more likely to be killed during an arrest. So that certainly has a factor. And that Black and white youth, and even extending to adulthood, use drugs at the same rate. But if you look at who's more likely to be arrested for a drug arrest, it still is Black and brown people. And that certainly has an impact on the family in terms of just basically from an economic standpoint, but also the mentality and the psyche of what it means to grow up, without a father, what it means, or father in the home, without what it means to grow up, without your mother in the home, and this legacy of having someone in your family who's incarcerated, where 1 in 3 Black people know someone directly who has been incarcerated. So, healthcare outcomes are not just related to healthcare. It's not just about having health insurance. It's about all the factors leading up to you getting into your clinic or your hospital, and then what happens within the waiting room. When I worked in Harlem, 9 of the 11 bus depots are located north of 96th Street. And if you look at, that's predominantly Hispanic, predominantly Black. And so you look at rates of asthma, different cancers, all of those play a factor. And across the nation, in lower resource communities, there are numerous examples of just places that have runoff from pollution. You think about what happened in Flint, Michigan, and certainly in places like in Harlem. So when we talk about the impact of racialized trauma, and certainly, the violence, the real threat of, policing is real, but we have to look at the totality of what's happening, the determinants, the multiple determinants of health that include housing stability, certainly food insecurity, which is real for everyone right now, especially with COVID-19, and in particular families, access to timely medical treatment, including the vaccination, including treatment in and of itself if you have COVID, even pre-COVID, just getting people in who may not have access to Medicaid, especially here in Florida, which is so archaic. Florida was one of 4 states to opt out of the expansion of Medicaid under the Affordable Health Care Act. And if you don't have health insurance here, it's not like there's not a lot of choices where you can go and get help. And so families certainly suffer from that. Education, Florida, I think it's 48th in education, and also from a mental health care standpoint, Florida is one of the hardest places, health insurance or not, to get access to mental health. So in the nation. So it's really difficult. So there's a multitude of factors that really impact the Black family. And certainly, I mean, if you want to talk about even generational wealth, which is a whole different topic, that has a real impact. So from a mental health standpoint, and certainly the psychology and the residual of trauma in terms of, structural racialization and systemic racism, I mean, it's impacting us in a major way. And I think mental health is going to be something that is really looked at and has to be evaluated over certainly 2021 on, because young people are struggling. 18-year-olds, it seems like, are really, at this cusp of trying to make it, trying to be independent, trying to figure it out, and are feeling stuck. They're anxious. Younger kids are isolated from their schools and teachers and grandparents, and they're anxious and depressed. So we really pay attention to the mental health of our youth, and check in with your grandkids and adult children, because mental health is top of mind. So I can stop there and take some questions, comments, thoughts.
I do have a couple of, thank you, Dr. Taylor, that's excellent. Let me see here. Dr. Taylor, are there any studies on the microaggressions that impact us almost every day?
Yeah, so microaggressions, I'm sure all of you know, but it was started by Dr. Chester Pierce, who was a Black psychiatrist who noticed that even his affluent patients that he had were reporting all these incidents of bias that were happening and how it impacted them. And so what we know about microaggressions is they're prevalent, and obviously they don't just affect Black people, but they cause stress and can lead to the same kind of damage to health and well-being as racism. Microaggressions are more common than racism. Microaggressions are thought largely to be unconscious, but we know that's not true, that there are conscious microaggressions. People may tell jokes or may say things and people bring it to their attention, they just don't care. But in terms of the impact on the brain, it still impacts the stress pathways. So they're damaging. They're not funny, they're not cute, and they are damaging.
And how can we leverage the fact that racism has been designated as a public health issue to address the issues you've highlighted?
Yeah, I think as a group, history is key. And I think that you start with the context of history and the fact that unfortunately, even though there is this new awareness of racism in America, it has been prevalent. And in many cases, if you look at statistics related to healthcare in terms of outcomes, we really haven't made a dent. Knowing, even I think it was in the 1999 that the first unequal treatment came out, where the Institute of Medicine looked at and documented under Dr. David Satcher, looked at, is it Satcher? No, I'm mixing his name up. Looked at and documented the history of racism in medicine and bias. And really that was thought to be groundbreaking. A lot of money went towards research, but things haven't really changed in terms of outcomes. Black men still are more likely to die earlier than any other group. And if you look at prostate cancer, breast cancer, I mean, we just, even with prevention, we haven't had the breaks that we need. So I think it is about understanding, having people understand the history of racism and racist acts in America as it relates to policies, as Dr. Ibrahim Kendi points out, and not people, and then identifying a small a subsection of what we can improve. And maybe that's COVID vaccine, maybe that's access to treatment, but just pointing out the work that we have to do. But it's heavy lifting. And so I think the goal is to really identify the group that most resonates and educate them and have them see that like healthcare is not just about making a diagnosis and finding the right treatment. It really is about how do you stop these processes. So I think history is key, and then tying it to something that's measurable, which is probably a bad answer, but
it's a great answer.
I don't know how many more questions.
it may be widening screening even for depression. You know, as much as we know about depression, we still 65% of people, we miss them still, who are either undiagnosed or underdiagnosed. So, you know, wherever Asala is presenting, maybe you give, you know, PHQ-9s, which can screen for depression. It's a 9 question. There's a PHQ-2 that screens, and then you tie it into, let's say, Centerstone, where I work. Make sure that people can get in a timely manner, and I can certainly help with that. But it's those kind of things that really tie into action in terms of, you know, it's enough about people coming into our community and doing blood pressure screening, telling people their blood pressure's high, but then they can't get into a clinic anywhere. So making sure that people tie in whatever you're finding to actionable treatment.
Excellent. We've got a couple of other really good ones. I know your time is short, but I do want to ask you this last question, and we'll save these others, and perhaps I'll shoot them to you. You can answer. How should we talk to our children about the impacts this has on their health?
Yeah, so know that, you know, systemic racism is real, and it impacts people at the cellular level. And so the key factor is stress. And so how do we manage our stress in terms of understanding life is stressful? We get that, but that you have the things that you do. I mean, sleep, you know, mindfully eating. Certainly, as we get older, more of a plant-based diet is optimal. All of that matters. You know, regular exercise, and really, it all is about the brain, because no matter what your zip code is, the brain is your brain. And so it takes in events that are stressful, but it's about balance and recovery. So the way to talk to kids is the fact that, you know, this is not new, you know, from a historical standpoint, and you still have to take care of yourself and talk about how you're feeling, and that it's okay if you need to go talk to, if you don't want to talk to me, mom, dad, friends, whatever, like go and talk to a therapist or a psychiatrist. But the fact is, we have to learn how to balance our medical health, our medical selves, and our mental health. And as the World Health Organization says, there is no medical stability without psychological stability.
Excellent, excellent. Let me exit and go to our gallery so everybody can see you. If I can do this as I'm trying to do. And let me thank you, Dr. Taylor. One of our longstanding traditions is to give an award. We are doing that virtually now, but let me assure you, this is going to come to you in the mail. And we just want to thank you. Gary, anything else for Dr. Taylor?
No, I like the fact that she factored in our national theme, which is the family. And we appreciate it greatly, Janet. Thank you for doing this. And thank you for doing a short notice also. So thank you, Janet. And I wish everybody understands and appreciates what she had to say.
Thank you. I wish I could stay, but thank you all for what you're doing too, because the history is so critical. It really is. So thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Taylor. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Let's move into our regular agenda for a bit, and I'm going to have another guest introduce in a moment. Our minutes from the February 26th, 2021 meeting. I haven't seen Fred yet this morning, but I assume he's on. Tech team, is Fred White with us?
I know he did check in at one point, so.
All right. Fred,
yes,
are you muted?
It says he's here.
Fred, are you muted?
He's here, but he's muted. Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
The minutes of February 26th have been distributed electronically, and so I'm going to move that they be accepted, subject to correction.
You've all hopefully had a chance to review those, and we will accept them subject to corrections or any additions. Thank you, Fred.
Okay.
Alan, our treasurer's report. You're muted, Alan. You're muted.
Hey, it helps to unmute yourself. Good morning.
Morning.
The story of our financial statements is the story of the success of our scholarship program. If you look at the numbers, most of them are driven by scholarships. I want to begin the report by thanking the people that made line number one, $16,000 possible. So our $16,000 revenue from donations came from donations from the Watkins, Danny Lynch, and Marsha Kendall Smith. I learned in my old job, you can never.
You muted again.
Muted again.
Alan,
Alan.
hit your button.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Sensitive mute button. You're good.
Okay, I'm good. Okay, so I said thank you for the first line on the P&L, which is donations from some of our members. Second item are dues receipts. Of the 2650, 2,000 have been received through PayPal, which has been very successful for us as a group. Our expenses, needless to say, based on our success, $16,000 for tuition, dues $1,390 miscellaneous expenses, giving us a profit for the month of $875. So our financials, again, are based on our scholarship, and they're pretty straightforward. We added a new feature. We added year to date, which just in this case combines January and February. And again, everything driven by scholarship, and as to be expected based on paying dues. Our total profit year to date through February is a minus $1,700. And that completes my report.
Thank you, Alan. Seeing no questions, the report will be accepted, subject to any additions. Rita, I saw Rita Smith check in for our second vice president's report on membership.
Good morning, everybody. Down in the action items, I just wanted to let everyone know the application has been updated online, and that's it.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So my report's going to be really, really quick. In your emails, when we conclude today, you'll find an announcement of our Closing the Gap campaign. We're not going to be holding Randy Rankin this year. The campaign letter will explain the board's thinking. Fred White will have some more to say about that, about an ongoing fundraising effort. But please do see that campaign letter, and it is designed to close the gap in what we would have otherwise generated from our annual Randy Rankin Classic. I've mentioned, I think on a few occasions, that one of the objectives of this board is to better engage with our institutional members. And I'm going to introduce one of those members here in a few moments for a new segment in our meeting, which we are calling Meet Our Institutional Members. So please look for that in a moment. The 106th annual meeting, a SALA meeting and conference, was, as I've said before, supposed to happen live in Jacksonville, Florida. That's obviously not going to happen in 2021. There is going to be another virtual conference. We're going to be putting more and more information on our website about that. And we continue to work with the Florida Coalition, the 6 Florida-based branches to represent Florida in this effort. And we're going to be reaching out and looking for some of you to help us with that effort. So do watch for that. And I'm going to pull up quickly my screen, hopefully. That's the plan anyway. Okay, so hopefully you all can see this. And there are really just 2 slides I want to show. This is the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce Award. Rita Smith, our second vice president, is also an executive of the Midland Black Chamber. And that's my wife, Lois, and myself receiving our award from Raina Clyett, the daughter of the Chamber's president. So we were able to do that on Sunday and received a lovely meal, and that presentation was on online. So again, thank you to the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce for awarding Minnesota ASALA Service Organization of the Year. And I do have that plaque. And let me then, the other slide I'd like to show, and I'm going to invite Lois Watson if she would unmute herself and give us a few comments in regards to these three heroes from our past, and how appropriate that, again, we are celebrating the 25th year anniversary of Minnesota ASALA. Lois, are you unmuted?
And you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, David. This morning, I'd like to pay tribute to one of our founders. The first picture you'll see is Ernestine Harris, who was our founder, but Freddie and Ernest Brown were our two other founding members. On March 9th, 2021, Freddie Sears Brown, one of the founders of the Minnesota ASALA branch, died at the age of 97. Freddie was born in Bradenton, attended Florida A&M, and after graduation went to Kansas City, Missouri, to work in a Black-owned newspaper, the Kansas City Call, writing advertising copy. She met and married a young newspaper reporter, Ernest Brown, and in 1946 moved to Detroit and raised a family of 3 sons and a daughter. The turbulent years of the 60s brought many events and changes affecting African Americans, and the Browns began collecting memorabilia and artifacts relating to what was going on in our country at that time. Ernest retired in 1974, and the couple moved to Bradenton, where Freddie worked as an equal opportunity coordinator and recruiter at the Manatee Community College, while also earning a Master's of Science degree in education at the University of South Florida, Sarasota, Manatee. The Browns continued to collect documents and memorabilia, artifacts, and different displays and mottos that presented the African-American story in America. The collection was displayed in a trailer on the Head Start campus in Bradenton. And that was the beginning of the Family Heritage House Museum. Now, in year 2000, the small trailer evolved into a 2,085 square foot wing of the Manatee Community College Library. I met the Browns in 1995 when I was asked by our founder, who you see here, Ernestine Harris, to meet with the Browns, and you see them standing here in front of their trailer, to discuss how we could form an ASALA branch in the community. We met in this small trailer, which was filled with all kinds of books, artifacts, newspaper clippings, and all the documents of the Black experience, especially the experiences in Florida and the local Bradenton area. Now, it was Ernestine's idea to organize an ASALA branch, and she shared the idea with Freddie Brown, a former member of the Detroit branch, who offered the Family Heritage Museum as a meeting place. At that time, I knew absolutely nothing about the national organization, but I was familiar with Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Ernestine and the Browns offered valuable information about this Black historical organization and felt that forming a branch here would be so beneficial to our community. Many newcomers were moving to the area, especially from New York, and these newcomers were interested in being involved with the community. This would not be a social organization, but it would be an organization that would do research, study, and keep our history alive, and also celebrate our achievements. Since it would encompass both Florida counties, Manatee and Sarasota, the two names were joined, and thus the new branch was called the Minnesota Association for the Study of African American Life and History. After several organizational meetings at the Brown Trailer, the first formal meeting of the Minnesota Sala took place on January 26, 1996, at the old Selby Library. At the meeting, 16 prospective members submitted their dues to become charter members. Later, additional members paid dues, and in 1996, in March, the Minnesota Asala was chartered with 20 members. And as David said, that was 25 years ago. The founders are listed on the website. Florence Jackson, Lillian Granderson, and yours truly have been active members since the very beginning. Freddie Brown was an active member until she moved from the area. I asked Lillian Granderson, one of our members, what did she remember about Freddie? She said years ago when she was studying at Florida A&M, she was a freshman, and there was a smart student there. Her name was Freddie Sears, and she was from Bradenton. She also remembers her as being a very dedicated Delta Sigma Theta soror, and also a member of the St. Mary Missionary Baptist Church. Lavette Harper also remembers working with Freddie when Asala began having speakers at the beginning of the Asala meetings, and the two of them started writing the criteria for our speakers and naming the speakers the Moment in History speakers. And all of us remember the warm welcome we always received whenever we visited the Family Heritage Museum. The Family Heritage Museum and the Browns were always an integral part of the Minnesota Asala. Members volunteered, donated materials, and documents to the museum. Asala had events and meetings there. Each year, it has been a tradition that Asala's last meeting be held at the Family Heritage Center, where student scholarships are presented to students at the meeting, and a donation from our Asala is given to the museum. In 2018, the museum was moved to the new Library and Learning Center on the campus of the State College of Florida in Manatee. Our last meeting before the pandemic shutdown was held in 2019 at the beautiful Learning Center. When Freddie's daughter, Beverly Brown Nash, spoke of her mother and the Family Heritage Museum, she said, "It started off with just a seed." And I can also add that Freddie helped plant another seed, the Minnesota Asala. Both seeds grew, developed, and blossomed into beautiful flowers for our community. And this is the legacy of Freddie Sears Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Thank you very much. Very good. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Let me move to our third guest for the morning. Andy Sandberg is the CEO of the Hermitage Artistic Retreat. He is an institutional member of Minnesota Sala and our first guest in our Meet Our Institutional Members. So Andy, I hope you're still with us. You're a co-host, so you should be able to.
I am indeed. So thank you, David, and thank you everyone for welcoming me. We are proud to be an institutional member. When we were Jim Stewart, who I don't need to introduce to anyone here, and Charlotte Perret, who is on our board, are co-chairs of our Outreach and Education Committee. And when Jim Stewart said, you know, the Hermitage needs to be an institutional member, we said, how do we sign up? We agree. So thank you, Jim, David, and everyone at Minnesota Asala for welcoming us into the fold. I've had the privilege of attending a couple of other meetings and events, and grateful to be here today. I apologize in advance that my time is a little tight. I do have an 11 o'clock meeting, so I will try to cover as much as I can in these 10 minutes. But just for a quick show of hands, how many people know about the Hermitage Artist Retreat? No shame if not. Okay, I'm scrolling through here. And how many have actually been to a Hermitage event or program of any kind? Okay, good. Well, I'm glad to have this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about what we do. So as David mentioned, my name's Andy Sandberg. I'm the artistic director and CEO here. I started just over a year ago, actually. The Hermitage is nearly 2 decades old, but I started in my role just before this pandemic, but I'll come back to that momentarily. To give a little background, the Hermitage is a multidisciplinary retreat on Manasota Key, which is part of Sarasota County. We are part of the Sarasota family, and we are serving artists across theater, visual art, literature, music, and really all mediums. So we are on a 9-acre campus down here on Manasota Key. You're looking at it behind me, with buildings dating back to 1907, 5 historic properties, as well as some new structures that hold our performance and admin spaces, and these beautiful outdoor venues. And one of the unique things about the Hermitage is that we're bringing in artists from all over the world, all backgrounds, all ages, races, accomplished artists who are leaders in their field. And it allows us to really partner with so many other institutions, arts, cultural, and educational in our region. A lot of people have described the Hermitage as this hidden gem. And one of the things we've really been trying to do over the past year or so is let people know we're not so hidden. I want to point something out, that every year we bring in about 60 to 80 leading artists in their respective disciplines. And every single one of those does a program of some kind as a free community give back program in Sarasota County or neighboring regions. That may not always be a performance, though a number of them are. We do performances here on our beach as well as throughout the county. We've partnered with many institutions, and as the world reopens and more indoor spaces open up, we'll continue to do so. We also, a number of our artists do school visits or teacher workshops or visits to retirement communities. So our artists, we try to give them the time and space to work, and in selecting and curating their community programs, we ask what's going to be interesting for the community and what's going to be interesting for them without the pressure of a finished product, or the New York Times is not going to be reviewing them. You know, this is not meant to be the anxiety that's put on them. It's how can it be about community betterment? And one of the interesting things about our selection process that many people also don't know, it's not the staff or the board selecting our artists who come here, and it's actually not an open application basis that runs through the staff. Our artists are curated by a group of, it's currently a 14-member National Curatorial Council. This is made up of leaders in their fields and disciplines across the country and sometimes internationally, heads of major theaters, galleries, concert halls, and more. And these are rotating terms. So these are like a board member, they have limited terms and they rotate through. So we're constantly expanding our circle. And the things they're tasked with are identifying artists who have their finger on the pulse of culture and the zeitgeist, and artists who will benefit from this time. So it's not about work product. And I think one of the things that has allowed the Hermitage to do is really bring in an extraordinarily diverse group of artists, because these are artists who have been tackling major issues of social justice, racial justice, climate change, and more years before these were sort of terms that were commonly known in the news. So just as an example, the Hermitage 13 years ago instituted a prize in partnership with the Greenfield Foundation. So we have the Hermitage Greenfield Prize, which is presented annually every year. And that includes a $30,000 commission to create a new work. It's a recognition of past accomplishment, but it comes with a mandate to create new work. And the mission of the prize is to make an impact on the broad as well as the artistic area of our society. And I know that sounds like a tall order, but if you think about that and what that's led to, and even in the original doctrine of this prize, it spoke about social justice. And so many of these artists have been tackling issues of social justice. And I think one other thing that is interesting to note is that the Hermitage has had an incredibly diverse roster of artists for a number of years. And one of the things we are looking to do is try to reach more diverse audiences, you know, as many of our peer institutions are. But just to give a sample of the last 130 artists invited, which is kind of the most accurate sample we have from the past couple of years, 28% identified as Caucasian, 24% identified as Black or African American, 12% as Asian, 9% as Latinx, 6% as Island Native American, and 21% didn't specify. Many of whom are multiracial and come from different backgrounds. And these are artists who are really telling the stories of tomorrow. What I like to point out is that people think of the opening or the premiere as the first introduction of work. And actually, the work is happening 6, 8, 10 years before that. So all that is to say that, you know, it's not always about having to come to the campus to see it. We do want to, you know, I've talked with David and Jim about maybe trying to set up an Asala event, a Minnesota Asala on Minnesota Keys sometime, and look forward to doing that. But we are starting to bring more programs up north and bring more to the community. And that's really what this task force that Jim and Charlotte and others are a part of is trying to identify how can we connect more with the community? How can we make sure that everyone is raising their hand saying, yes, I've been to a Hermitage program? Because there is this democratization of art. The term came up. Ed Swan has also been very involved. I think I saw Ed there. We were in a committee meeting yesterday, and the term came up that the Hermitage is not about, you know, how expensive is the ticket. And I think we do have a couple of fundraisers like everyone that people have sometimes affiliated us with, and we're proud of those. But the bulk of our work is this free and accessible community programming that I think we're really trying now to get the message out, you know, to let people know that Sarasota and our community, we are bringing in these people who have had 12 Pulitzer Prizes, Poets Laureate, Tony, Grammy, Oscar, Emmy winners. And I think a lot of people just don't know this little gem that's been here, and we're trying to build more of those partnerships and relationships. So with that, I thought I'd pause for a second and just see if Ed or Jim, you wanted to add anything about kind of your involvement and connection to the Hermitage. And again, with apologies that I'll have to jump in a few moments.
Well, the only thing that, a couple of things I would add is, number one, if you look at the roster of artists that have been honored by this prize, it has been incredibly diverse, and has been diverse for a long period of time, which frankly probably makes it relatively unique and worthy of both support and participation by a broader community. Among the various arts institutions in Sarasota that consider themselves attracting a broadly diverse audience, with the perhaps exception of West Coast Black Theater. So that's special. The setting is really remarkable. If you haven't been there, I would urge you just to arrange a visit and see one of the programs and see the setting, because it's a special place. And oh, there are some pictures of it, that affords artists, many of whom come from pressure cooker kinds of environments, to go and simply create and be. So just some thoughts.
Thank you very much for that, Ed. Jim, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'm glad that you have the picture of the Greenfield Prize winners up on the screen, because I think that gives our members the opportunity to see some of the diversity that you mentioned, and the fact that African Americans are very much represented, including the latest winner. And these artists have indicated a willingness to engage the community. So we certainly want to follow up and develop the strategies that Andy talked about to make them available to in different venues.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the artists quoted here on a promo piece that we have describes it as an organization that does more for artists than any I have encountered. And I think that really speaks volumes. And we've heard that from so many of our artists, and that they come here and accomplish more in a matter of a few weeks. They get to spread out their multi-week residencies over 2 years. And they often say in any 2 or 3 week stint, they get more done here than they do in 2 or 3 years back home. And as was just alluded to, they come from these cultural pressure cookers and are really here with a safe space to create and build that next work of tomorrow. So in addition to partnering with all the organizations we do in town, these works go on to major galleries, concert halls, and museums and Broadway stages all around the world. So that's just a brief overview. I did mention to David, I have some additional materials that I will send around with some of these visuals, as well as some video I didn't get to share today. And then I'll be happy to provide my contact for any questions. But I do genuinely look forward to having a chance to meet those of you I haven't gotten to meet in person, and looking forward to that time we can safely gather, and we'll keep you updated on these upcoming programs. And regarding the Hermitage Greenfield programs, we actually do have a number coming up that are free and accessible. There is the gala element, which is a ticketed event, but we also have a number of talks with the winner, Alicia Harris, on April 10th here on the beach. We would be delighted to see you there, as well as a talk with this year's jurors, which includes Nataki Garrett, Mandy Greenfield, and Robert O'Hara, brilliant minds of the theater, and premieres by Helga Davis and Martina Mayock, 2 past winners. So I'll send out some info, but you can register online at hermitageartistretreat.org. These events are free with a small registration charge sometimes, but we are just excited to continue building our audience, and grateful to have this opportunity to share time and space with you today. And thank you for inviting us to speak, and we're honored to be partnered with Minnesota Asala.
Andy, thank you so much. I know you've got to run, and you'll stop your screen share so everybody can get a look. I told Andy that I'm married to a cellist, and as soon as she sees this this view, I know we're going to be down there. So thank you again, Andy. And again, this is—
Yeah, I saw it.
Thank you all for having me, and I truly appreciate it, and look forward to sending around some more info.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. All right, let's get back to our agenda. I believe that our corresponding secretary has joined us. Marion, good morning. You're muted. There you go.
Hi. I don't have anything to report this week. I don't have an email this week.
All right, but Marion, you might make a comment about our constant contact, our new email system.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you just tell people sort of where we are, and we're always looking for feedback on that.
Okay. Constant Contact is a wonderful email system. David is really good at it. If you've been receiving his emails now for the last month, he's shaking his head no, but he's really good at it. And I'm slowly putting in all of our contacts. I have all of the email addresses in, and I'm going in and I'm putting in addresses, filling those in. And what I'm doing, why it's taking so long, is I'm verifying that I'm putting in paid members. I'm putting in all members, but I'm putting in paid members for 2021. And by September, we'll be able to have all members in, and we'll be able to report completely. It'll be perfect. And that's all I have to say about Constant Contact.
Thank you, Marion. Marion is being modest. In addition to Constant Contact, she and Rita and the membership committee have been working on a new membership management system, which you'll hear more about. And let me assure you that we're going to have a 2-phased online, and we'll be able to give hard copies from that system for those of you who can't give up that little book. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, Marion. Next, we have our scholarship committee report. Harriet, good morning. You've been busy.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Yes, okay. I just want you to know that we are deep in the heart of interviewing and looking at reviewing all of these applications for the high school and for the college students. And we're just so impressed with what we are hearing and seeing. We just finished the 19 high school students with their interviews, and we were blown away by each and every one of them and what they're accomplishing academically and with their community service, and even working long hours at jobs because of the hardship at home. There's been such a range of talents with these students, going from one young woman who wants to be a marine biologist, who is has received so many awards for an oyster filter system that she's invented to eliminate red tide pollution. Another student, a young man who has grown up in a drug addicted home with no support, who has managed some way to excel academically and with community service, who wants to be a criminal lawyer. And so they are just so beautifully put together and mature in their accomplishments. So we're also dealing with the 12 college applicants as well. So we have 19 high school students and 12 college applicants who are applying for scholarships. So there's such a great need. And so we're counting on everyone to help in this support and with this campaign coming up now. And so we're looking for you to really do whatever you can. It's going to be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. It was pointed out that we missed our good and welfare report. We did not. Bo Bell had an appointment this morning. I spoke to him. He doesn't have any updates or anything new to report. So we'll move on. A very nice note I'll share from Kathy Marsh on behalf of Family Heritage House Museum. Thank you for the beautiful tribute to Ms. Freddie Brown. I so miss hosting our annual meeting and look forward to your return post-COVID. Blessings to all, Kathy. And Kathy's on this morning. Good morning, Kathy. Good to see you. All right. Education Committee, Jean and Linda Crump, I believe, are on, and you're on.
David, the Education Committee has met several times since the last solid meeting. We put on a presentation in March or February about the Divine Nine with Ray and Fran Taylor emphasizing Alpha Kappa Alpha and Kappa Alpha Psi. We have come up at your charge with a program to go beyond Black History Month, each month that ASALH meets. And we have 2 scheduled programs. The programs will always be the 3rd Thursday of the month, and the committee meets the 2nd Tuesday of the month. And the first program is going to be Black men and women in film and media. And the second one in May will be the Veterans of Color. We have a panel of Paul Tolliver and Charles Williams, and we're looking for a 3rd person. And the way we anticipate getting that 3rd person is we're going to consider starting a speakers bureau among the ASALH members and the institutional members. And we're asking for, when we do it, your area of expertise, your area of retirement, where you worked before, to become a speaker for ASALH. And we're asking, when we make that request, to volunteer one of these months that the Education Committee puts on the Beyond Black History Moment. And we hope to get a lot of volunteers from our membership. The Well, I went to the second topic, which was the Speakers Bureau. And we're working on that with the committee and with ASALA to put on these programs. We'll evaluate the success of these programs over the summer. And then we'll, if it's appropriate, go on with the Beyond Black History Moment for September through May. And we'll have the volunteers. The committee will select the topics. And that's about all on those two things, with the expectation that each event will be an informal type event with the ASALA members and the respective institutional members being involved in either a Zoom webinar or a Zoom chat. And I think that's all I got to say. Linda's going to fill in what I didn't say.
And the only thing I'd add is that we know a lot of people work, as we heard Dr. Taylor remind us this morning, that it's hard for people to attend. So we hope that these events will be in the evening so that we can do it over that Zoom platform still. And it's funny how a lot of things come together. David said that he was upset that he didn't have some volunteers for an event. I sent him an email. The membership committee talked to him about how do we get people to volunteer. And the Speakers Bureau, I hope none of you are frightened by it, because you can talk about your passion. It doesn't have to be the work you did before. Today, when I heard Edward Swan talking about the Hermitage, I said, aha, we need to tap Edward's talent to have him help us out with something. So it's not going to take a lot of time. We hope it's a lot of fun. And we look forward to really sharing all the wealth and talent that we have in this group. That's all from us.
That's our report.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Thank you both, Gene and Linda, for your dedication, and to the entire Education Committee and all of our committees. You all are marvelous, and you're doing wonderful work, and we appreciate you. Old business, a new business, I should say, was really our meet our institutional member. Old business, quick reference to our strategic planning process. Again, you remember Bill Watkins began this with us 2 months or so ago. It's continuing. We're in phase 3. We're now looking at our Arts and Culture Committee as well as finance and fundraising, with the goal that we'll have our vision, mission, objectives, and goals in place the end of this month, April, I should say, and prepared to present a full strategic plan to the membership according to our schedule. So again, thanks for all working on that project. The last item I have in the way of announcements, I've already mentioned the campaign, Closing the Gap, which again should be in your email. I'm looking at mine now. I know it's come up this morning, so please take a look at that. But Fred, would you share a bit from the fundraising committee and your plans for our future? Fred White, please. You're muted, Fred. You're muted. There you go.
Okay, it helps. As Alan said, it helps to unmute. Good morning, everybody. As most of you know, our scholarship developments are the most important thing, at least as far as I'm concerned. And in the past, we have gotten scholarship money with using 2 venues: event scholarships, primarily Randy Rankin, and direct scholarship funds. Jim is asking in his closing the gap email to have people contribute direct scholarship funds. I already did that yesterday, although there's some little glitch about how we can make sure that people donate is actually going to scholarships. As of yesterday, it did not do that on the website, but that's what I will designate those for scholarships for the people who are going to be awarded scholarship money in May. Now, my second, and I've recruited Frank Plains, or David has helped me recruit Frank Plains. Who else do I have? I have it on a list somewhere. Frank Plains and Ed Swan.
And Jim, what's his name? That guy, Jim.
Jim Stewart, right. Now, we're looking for other volunteers, because what we're going to be focusing on this fall with respect to 2022 graduates or people who are applying to college is trying to get direct scholarship money via either online giving or producing the form for people who don't want to go online and want to write checks. That's my first objective once we get with the committee, and I hope to get some more members. The second thing we're going to be looking at is, in terms of event scholarships, is who would be so honored to chair or co-chair next year's Randy Rankin if we have one. Now, I personally like direct giving because there's very little expense involved. Giving events, there are wonderful things, but there are expenses involved. And I think the last couple of years we did it, my wife and I think we were $20,000-$25,000 of expense. Now we made up for it in the money that was given. So what we're going to be looking for, either from new members or a current member or a longstanding member, is someone to look at whether we should do the Randy Rankin as an event scholarship event. I mean, as a fundraising event for scholarship, and how do we do it? I think next year we can do some fundraising events like Randy Rankin, either as it has been presented in the last few years when we had it, or in a modified version. I don't really care. So we're looking at this, and we hope to, after the Close the Gap campaign is over, I guess the end of next month, David,
Yes.
that this fall, and we're not sure really based on COVID whether we'll be meeting this fall in person. I would prefer that, but who knows? But what we're going to do is do some direct solicitation of members for direct scholarship funds. And one of the things I hope to do to make that more real is either to get videos or in-person testimonials from students if we have face-to-face meetings, letting the membership know, kind of like what Harriet talked about, how well these students have done. So people actually can put a face on their money. Now, in one of my past lives as the law school dean, we had a lunch, and this was in San Francisco, and the lunch would have the young students who had been, law students who had been giving scholarship money, sit for lunch with the people who actually gave them the money. The result was the students expressed their gratitude, and good golly, the people who gave money gave us more money. So I think it's really important for people to put a face on these young people. And Harriet has just demonstrated how well these students are doing and hope to be. If we can tie that in, I think we can do well this fall through the end of this calendar year to get funds for the 2022 class. And at the same time, the committee can brainstorm how it can work to go back to at least some kind of Randy Rankin event, whether it's lunch, golf, tennis, pickleball, card games, all of that. So that's all I have to say, and I welcome comments.
Thank you, Fred. I'll just add that it is our desire that we meet again in person. As much as I love seeing all these beautiful faces, I would love to see you all in the flesh and be able to give you hugs. And so we've got a team working on that issue. Let me thank Henry Richardson for his direct engagement with us, with the various vendors, finding out what's going on in the community, who's holding events, how are they doing it. We want you to know that we would love to have a welcome back in September and a real one in the flesh, but we're going to be guided by the developments in this pandemic. I saw something today that Sarasota is considered parts of Sarasota are considered a hot spot. And so we just have to be smart. Let me that's really the end of our agenda. Thank you all for participating, but let me see if there are questions on any of the various items. We've covered a lot today. And if you're having difficulties with our emails, I've gotten a couple of notes that people are not getting them. We'll go into the system and be sure we've got the corrected emails. I know I heard from Dan Boxer. I know Larry Lawson had some difficulties. So we're going to address those, but please let us know if you're not getting communications that either come from me or that come, they should be coming from me, but sometimes they say info@asala.org. Any questions of the body before we thank you all for your Friday morning attention.
Harold Young has his hand up.
Please, Harold.
Yes, the question I have, is the system ready for the Randy Rankin scholarship donation? So we have to wait a bit, or should we donate now, or what?
Please donate now. What I've said to the board, Marion is working with our webmaster to create a distinct button, but we're considering the campaign starting as of today, and monies that come in will be dedicated to that campaign. We'll try to put a separate button, but if you click on the letter that you received from me, it should take you right to the donations page. If there's someone who does not want their donation to go to the scholarships during this April campaign, and you want it to go to general operations, obviously you can let us know that. But our campaign starts today, runs through the end of April. We'll likely do with Harriet a reminder midway through April. But thank you all in advance. Our students are wonderful, well-deserving, and I know our folks will support this campaign. Thanks, Harold. Any other questions?
David, this is Linda Crump, and if the boxers are on, I wondered if they could give us an update on that lynching memorial.
Thank you, Linda. Dan Litton, I know you're here.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yes, we literally yesterday, first we submitted a request for some funding from the Sarasota Community Foundation with both education and planning. And we've been in contact with Trey Walker from EJI, and I think David got a copy of an email sent us in response. We are planning a dedication ceremony in October, November, hopefully in person. And I will be, Linda, you beat the gun in the sense that I'm about to send an email to you and your husband and Mr. Wilkins, and that for the education committee to start on planning the education program for the lynching marker, which is probably the most critical part of it. And one of the most important is an ongoing education program. We've gotten a lot of information on costs and statistics already from embracing our differences, and also the Florida Studio Theater in terms of bringing students to the marker or a central place, and also to send someone into schools. We're starting to plan the dedication ceremony. We've gotten a lot of support from St. Pete Asala. Jackie Hubbard has done an incredible job helping us. And there is a lot more to come. And now the real work is starting. One other thing I will add, we are desperately trying to find the actual lynching location for 3 lynchings which took place in the Palmetto Woods. And we're hoping, once we get out of some quarantine, to meet with a member of the Palmetto Historical Society to locate a general location. If that we can do that, we will have a soil collection project, which many of you know, collect soil from the supposed lynching site. It doesn't have to be the exact place. And we bring a mason jar full of the soil to Montgomery, Alabama, and we hopefully will keep a copy of that, or another jar, at the New African American Cultural Center. So that's my report as of now, but thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Litton. Anything else? Any other questions?
Dave, Ken Hill.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, just a question regarding the scholarship fundraising. Do we have a goal in mind collectively for the membership to know what we're shooting for, to meet comparable numbers to the Randy Rankin? Just Do you understand my question?
I do. And Fred or Harriet, do you have a
overall goal?
Yeah.
We want all of your money. Well, you know, I have to talk to, you know, what I want to do is excluding named scholarships. What I want to do is look with Harriet and Alan to find out what, and that includes last year's day of giving or 2 days of giving. What have we been generally getting? Again, I'm not talking about the Sneed scholarship. I'm talking about the scholarships that we kind of renew on a regular basis without having the donor pinned in. So I don't know. I'm thinking, David and Harry may disagree with me. I'm thinking we would like to have at least $5,000.
$45,000.
Just to give you.
No, I didn't say 45 by April. I said 5,000.
All right, just to give you a recap, in 2020, we were able to give our high school students alone $45,000, just the high school.
But that wasn't based on, I agree with that, Harry, but that wasn't based on just event fundraising. It was based on some direct payments.
So let's do this.
It was a combination.
I'm just trying to determine what we need to at least match last year's Randy Rankin activity.
And that's what we'll get you.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's what we'll get you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right now we have 23,100 for the high school. And we had 45,000 for the prior season for the high school. And
All right,
so we want to ramp that up to try to match that.
Okay.
So that's a lot more than 5,000.
Thank you.
Ken, thank you for the question. And again, take a look at the letter. You'll see our intent and we will set that target and communicate that as well. Alan, do you have anything to add or again, we'll meet on this and.
I think we should meet. I have some ideas, but we should all meet together. We'll have something in a couple of days.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? If
I have
not,
a new announcement. David? Yeah, I just want to let you know that we produced a new promotional video for the Sam Gilliam exhibition that I sent to you an email if you want to pass it on to the members. It's a short teaser that features some of the works. It is designed to get you guys out to come and see the rest of the exhibition. So hopefully, I'll see you guys there. So it should be in your inbox. I sent it to you, David, this morning.
I saw it yesterday, Mark. We will get that out to the membership. Seeing no other questions, thank you all. We will be in touch and everyone have a good weekend. Thank you.
Okay. See you later.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Hi, Sherry.
We'll leave it open for a few minutes so we can wave at each other as we exit. But thank you all again.
Yeah, don't forget about the food drive. Don't forget about Light of the World food giveaway.
You can stop the recording, David.
Please do. Go ahead. Fran, that announcement is going out.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.